Chapter 43. The following day was overcast, but very warm, and Louis was sweating heavily by the time he had checked Rachel's and Ellie's baggage through and getting their tickets out of the computer. He supposed just being able to keep busy was something of a gift, and he felt only a small, aching comparison to the last time he had put his family on a plane to Chicago at Thanksgiving. Ellie seemed distant and a trifle odd. Several times that morning, Louis had looked up and seen an expression of peculiar speculation on her face. "Conspirators complex working overtime, boyo," he told himself. She said nothing when told they were all going to Chicago, she and Mommy first, perhaps for the whole summer, and only went on eating her breakfast, cocoa bears. After breakfast, she went silently upstairs and got into the dress and shoes Rachel had laid out for her. She had brought the picture of her pulling Gage on her sled to the airport with her, and she sat calmly in one of the plaster contour seats in the lower lobby, while Louis stood in line for their tickets, and the loudspeaker blared intelligence of arriving and departing flights. Mr. and Mrs. Goldman showed up 40 minutes before flight time. Erwin Goldman was natty and apparently sweatless, in a cashmere topcoat, in spite of the 60-degree temperatures. He went over to the AV's desk to check his car in, while Dory Goldman sat with Rachel and Ellie. Louis and Goldman joined the others at the same time. Louis was a bit afraid that there might be a reprise of the My Son playlet, but he was spared. Goldman contented himself with a rather limp handshake and a muttered hello. The quick, embarrassed glance he afforded his son-in-law confirmed the certainty Louis had awakened with this morning. The man must have been drunk. They went upstairs on the escalator and sat in the boarding lounge, not talking much. Dory Goldman thumbed nervously at the copy of an Erica Jong novel, but did not open it. She kept glaring, a little nervously, at the picture Ellie was holding. Louis asked his daughter if she would like to walk over to the bookstore with him and pick out something to read on the plane. Ellie had been looking at him in that speculative way again. Louis didn't like it. It made him nervous. "Will you be good at Grandma and Granddad's?" he asked her as they walked over. "Yes," she said. "Daddy, will the truant officer get me? Andy Pescoa says there's a truant officer and he gets school skippers." "Don't you worry about that truant officer," he said. "I'll take care of the school, and you can start again in the fall with no trouble." "I hope I'll be okay in the fall," Ellie said. "I never was in a grade before, only kindergarten. I don't know what kids do in grades. Homework, probably." "You'll be fine." "Daddy, are you still pissed off at Granddad?" He gaped at her. "Why in the world would you think I was? That I didn't like your Granddad, Ellie?" She shrugged, as if the topic held no particular interest for her. When you talk about him, you always looked pissed off.
Ellie, that's vulgar.
Sorry. She gave him that strange, fey look, and then drifted off to look at the racks of kid books. Mercer Mayer, and Morris Sandak, and Richard Scarry, and Beatrix Potter, and that famous old standby, Dr. Seuss.
How do they find this stuff out? Or do they just know? How much does Ellie know? How's it affecting her? Ellie, what's behind that pale little face? Pissed off at him. Christ.
Can I have these, Daddy? She was holding out a Dr. Seuss book, and another one Louis hadn't seen since his own childhood. The story of little black Sambo and how the tigers had gotten his clothes one fine day.
I thought they'd made that one an unbook.
Louis thought, bemused.
Yes,
he said, and they stood in a short line at the cash register.
Your granddad and I like each other fine,
he said, and thought again of his mother's story of how when a woman really wanted a baby, she found one. He remembered his own foolish promises to himself that he would never lie to his own children. Over the last few days, he had developed into quite a promising liar, he felt, but he would not let himself think about it now. Oh, she said, and fell silent. The silence made him uneasy. To break it, he said,
So do you think you'll have a good time in Chicago?
No.
No? Why not?
She looked up at him with that fey expression. I'm scared. He put his hand on her head.
Scared? Honey, what for? You're not scared of the plane, are you?
No, she said. I don't know what I'm scared of. Daddy, I dreamed we were at Gage's funeral, and the funeral man opened his coffin, and it was empty. Then I dreamed I was home, and I looked in Gage's crib, and that was empty too. But there was dirt in it.
Lazarus, come forth.
For the first time in months, he remembered the dream he had after Pascal's death. The dream, and then waking up to find his feet dirty and the foot of the bed caked with pine needles and muck. The hairs at the nape of his neck stirred.
Just dreams,
he said to Ellie, and his voice sounded, to his ears at least, perfectly normal.
They'll pass.
I wish you were coming with us, she said. Or that we were staying here. Can we stay, Daddy? Please? I don't want to go to Grandma and Granddad's. I just want to go back to school, okay?
Just for a little while, he said. He swallowed. A few things to do here, and then I'll be with you. We can decide what to do next.
He expected an argument, perhaps even an Ellie-style tantrum. He might even have welcomed it, a known quality as that look was not. But there was only that pallid, disquieting silence which seemed so deep. He could have asked her more, but found he didn't dare. She had already told him more than he perhaps wanted to hear. Shortly after he and Ellie returned to the boarding lounge, the flight was called. Boarding passes were produced, and the four of them got in line. Louis embraced his wife and kissed her hard. She clung to him for a moment, and then let him go so he could pick Ellie up and buss her cheek. Ellie gazed at him solemnly with her sable eyes. "I don't want to go," she said again, but so low only Louis could really hear over the shuffle and murmur of the boarding passengers. "I don't want Mommy to go either." "Ellie, come on," Louis said. "You'll be fine." "I'll be fine," she said. "But what about you, Daddy? Daddy, what about you?" The line had begun to move now. People were walking down the jetway to the 727. Rachel pulled Ellie's hand, and for a moment she resisted, holding up the line, her eyes fixed on her father. And Louis found himself remembering her impatience last time, her cries of, "Come on, come on, come on." "Daddy?" "Go on, Ellie, please." Rachel looked at Ellie and saw the dark, dreamy look for the first time. "Ellie?" she said, startled and, Louis thought, a little afraid. "You're holding up the line, baby." Ellie's lips trembled and grew white. Then she allowed herself to be led into the jetway. She looked back at him, and he saw naked terror in her face. He raised his hand to her in false cheeriness. Ellie did not wave back.